Jenny, who hadn't even thought much about the fair, still 2 months away, nevertheless answered Grace's ingratiating jibes. "No, I've been busy on the river. Tristler doesn't need much practice, though," Jenny hollered as the Cantrell carriage rumbled off the ferry floorboards and roared uphill to the church. "There'll be no roam of safety for Octavius Gracious, I can assure you," Jenny droned menacingly to a round of giggles. "Such fine clothes to be wearing to a sewing circle," Rady commented. "Oh," Jenny answered. "Cantrell's is big on outdoing everyone at most anything doing." "For sure," Dewey agreed, pushing away from the bank and paddling hard with Jenny's assistance. Soon they disappeared beyond the bend and were well into the day's adventure. "Do you think we'll run into the captain on this trip?" Liz suddenly asked, interrupting Jenny and Dewey's intriguing tale of lost Confederate gold buried on the creek back at old Sweetwater town. "Well, you never know," Jenny replied. "It's getting to be that time of year again. You'd best keep your eyes peeled for any suspicious signs." "Like what?" she demanded. "Oh, the captain's been known to scare up a covey of whales now and then, or spook a deer on the north side of the river who might decide to take a drink of his Confederate water." "Ducks is the first thing to sense him, though," Dewey added, barely able to stifle a laugh, which caused Rady to look away behind the stern, lest the nimble-witted Liz catch them in the act of deception. "If they fly off to the north, you can be sure the captain had something to do with it. I know he can't stand to have Yankees savoring his prime catfish." "To be sure," Jenny chimed in. Luckily, the act of rowing kept their backs turned to Liz, who returned to her watchtower duties with renewed vigor. "I'll bet there's tons of gold just laying at the bottom of the creek. I'm going to pan some when we get to the bottom of the shoals," Jenny announced. "I wish I could find just a little." "Are you sure we can make it to the old factory, carrying all these picnic supplies?" Rady asked. "Sure," Dewey came back. "The creek will be pretty slow this time of year. And when we get to the shoals, we can stop at any time for a bit of lunch. You're right, though, it might be easier stumbling through the rapids if we didn't have anything to carry." Jenny agreed, and it was decided to make lunch at the first suitable spot near the bottom of the shoals. Because the upstream journey was more demanding than expected, requiring frequent breaks for rest, the sun was quite high in the sky when the sweaty crew slipped into the mouth of the Sweetwater Creek. They paddled as far upstream as was possible, enjoying the lush overhanging greenery and teeming horticulture. The twisting, curving estuary, strewn with debris of uprooted trees and broken branches, fascinated the city girls. The draping Spanish moss added a spooky flair to the narrowing channel that sent Liz clinging to her sister in the stern. A cool, stiff breeze raced through the vegetation, soothing their parched faces. The explorers pushed on a mile or so in the muddy, snag-choked channel, finally arriving at the Three Sisters Rocks. These were 3 huge granite boulders marking the bottom of the shoals and said to imprison the spirits of 3 Cherokee Indian maidens. Liz sat aghast as Jenny related yet another local Indian legend said to date back 1,000 years. Apparently, the 3 sisters had strayed too long from their domestic chores, enjoying the beauty of the Amahanta. Jenny used the Cherokee word for Sweetwater. As punishment, the woodland goddess transformed them into stone, marking the entrance to this rich, bountiful area, and urging all not to tarry there long. Upon landing, they tied the boat securely and gathered their packages. After dutifully respecting the peace and serenity of the former Indian maidens, they stomped loudly through the splashing water. The ever-present hillside soon closed sharply about, and the stream began a lazy ascent. At first the steps proceeded gradually, almost like a staircase, but soon the terraces began to loom larger and larger in front of the adventurers. Some of the steps required teamwork to hoist one another up over the 3 or 4 foot cascades. Although invigorated by the splashing water, the struggle soon took a toll, and the party decided to break for a scrumptious sandwich. The din of the falling water was becoming quite loud, and speaking was reduced to a series of sharp barks. The children arrived at a fairly long rampart, and spying a nicely sized fallen oak tree to the side, proceeded to spread a table. Liz spent a good few minutes assuring herself that all rattlesnakes and poisonous iguana had been roused. She returned her attention to satiating her deprived abdominals. More cheese and crackers, she demanded, and passed the mustard. The effects of nutrition soon placated the frayed nerves and the temperaments of the group, and the party collapsed into humorous bantering. Dewey kept insisting he spied long, hairy reptiles, ominously observing them, but Liz soon decided he was pulling her leg. She was more concerned about Captain Butner, Captain Nickajack, and the many assorted Indian chieftains who seemed to be buried on each and available promontory. Too many chiefs and hopefully not enough Indians, Jenny noted, glancing into the woods to frighten Liz. "That Grace Cantrell is such a twit," Jenny announced suddenly. "She's just needling you about the race next month," Dewey answered. "She never could stand you beating her in that high-priced glue factory of hers in juniors last year. Since she's advanced to the senior race this year, she's decided she's become a horsewoman. She knows she'll never win again after next year when you move up." There was a grain of truth in what Dewey had related to the group, Jenny agreed, and nothing had frightened her more than embarrassing Grace and all her rich finery last year. But she secretly harbored an insecurity regarding her obvious polish and selfish charm. But it was comforting that Dewey, whom she admired most in the world, had spotted the cow for what she really was, and seemed to prefer Jenny's meager attributes. "Such a lovely dress, and just to be sitting all day at the church sewing circle," Rady noted again. Jenny, who had despised and dreaded the nearing participation in such womanly activity, continued, "They'll all get their noses so out of joint when someone wants to do the least little thing different. Papa says that although I should be respectful of elders, I shouldn't pay much attention to all of them silly cluckers." At which point the group burst into gales of laughter at the metaphor. It seemed most appropriate, even to the irrepressible 6-year-old, who clucked and picked about in mockery. Jenny noted a looseness in Rady's laughter that contrasted with her stiff, deliberate movement of body and her salient aloofness, which indicated the absorption of a good dose of Protestant Puritanism in her education and upbringing. The harshness and severity of schooling during the period tended to foster conformity and conventionalism. Her time in the country, in the company of two such candid, schismatic personages, was clearly having some effect on the development of her intellect. "Enough girl talk," Dewey asserted. "We have mountains to climb."